welcome back to another episode of Ink and Overalls. I'm Dedra. Thanks for joining me today. I'm super excited to continue with our Y series today. I think this will be probably the last episode for the foreseeable future of what I have to talk about with this particular thing. So thank you for joining me. If you have missed any episodes, there is a playlist on Wally Media Group on YouTube. If you go to playlist, there's a playlist that has all of our episodes so far. You can catch up there. And don't forget to subscribe, guys. Hit the subscribe button so that you can sign up for notifications and you can know whenever everything gets posted. I don't post. This gets posted on Wednesdays at 7 Central Time on Wally Media Group on YouTube. And on Sundays, I upload audio to podcast platforms. So all of that out of the way, just a little housekeeping. And yeah, so let's jump into this episode. I just recorded this episode and I either deleted it off my camera or it never recorded in the first place. So we're here to talk about it again. So I'm going to just start by saying this episode is why cook from scratch. Why I try to cook, whole foods for my family. Why I try to have pantry staples available and meal plan from that sort of thing. Now, I was very reluctant to do this episode because I'm not going to sit here. I'm never going to pretend to be something I'm not. And so, I can talk about this subject, but I can talk about it with also being, with the transparency of letting you know that I am far from perfect at this. I fail plenty. It is very much a continual pursuit for me of trying to, abandon most of the convenience products and try to make as much as I can from scratch for my family. That's always my ultimate goal. But now, life ebbs and flows. Things happen. I get busy. I get tired. It just depends. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying I'm definitely not here to shame you or demonize anything, as far as convenience foods go or any of that, because I don't want you to feel shame and condemnation about the way you feed your family. We do the best we can with what we know. As we know better, we try to do better. Maya Angelou said that, I think. But it's the truth. And, it's a continual pursuit. I mean, we wake up every day and just try to be the best version we can of ourselves, right? So there are going to be times in your life when this may not be a priority for you, and that's okay. I'm not going to be, like I said, I can't sit here and pretend to be perfect. So I guess, you may not want to hear from me at all because of that, or maybe you're like me and you're doing the best you can and you want to hear more about my why and kind of how I navigate things. And so if that's the case, I hope you can, join along, come along. Like I said, my desire is always to be authentic, guys. I don't ever want to be, pretend to be anything I'm not. So, you go in my pantry and look around, you're going to see some convenience items. You look in my freezers, you're going to see some convenience items. It is, this is more of an episode about my ongoing pursuit of whole foods for my family. Now, what do I mean when I say whole foods? Whenever I'm talking about whole foods, I am talking about using staple ingredients to make meals and snacks for my family. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Actually, usually that's, if you have a pantry full of basic staples like flour and then whatever sweetener you want to use, whether it's maple syrup or honey or coconut sugar or cane sugar or whatever you choose, and oats, cornmeal, things like that. You've got rice, beans, oats, potatoes. You've got all those things on hand. You can really usually pull together some type of, simple rustic meal that will really probably come together quicker than you think it will. We kind of think of home cooking and homemade cooking as this, huge task, this huge chore, this feat that we have to reach for and accomplish, or it's supposed to look a certain way or be a certain level of complicated, but it's not really true. That I've learned, the more you learn in the kitchen, you gotta get your feet under you as far as knowing how to deal with those ingredients, because if you've never worked with them before, it's gonna be a learning curve, but that's fine. That's I talked about in my skills episode. I think it was episode 2. I talk about, the fact that kitchen skills are an amazing thing to acquire, and that's something you can acquire no matter where you are. So really this episode, wherever you're at, you probably either have access to a kitchen or know someone who does. And, kitchen skills are something you can start learning at any point, and they are something that you will continue to learn and grow all through your homesteading journey. And so, I'm always surprised at just how simple meal planning really is if I'm just planning basic whole foods, just things that are, like I'm making right now in the crock pot, I'm making refried beans. It's literally like beans and onions and like dried beans, onions, water, spices, jalapenos from the garden, things like that. And it was so easy, and it's in a crock pot. Like, just because you're cooking whole food, and cooking from scratch, it doesn't mean you abandon all convenience items in your kitchen. I mean, I have 4 crock pots and I use them. I love my crock pots. I use, I've got some really cool like choppers and graters and things like that do make it easier, because, we may not be Ma Walton here and, have all day in the kitchen to spend throwing together meals. But we also have the convenience of a dish, if you choose to have a dishwasher, and, things like the little turn grater thing, or the little thing like the mandolin slicers, and the things that make the whole process a little bit easier. Now, I'm not saying you have to have an appliance or like a small something for everything every task in the kitchen. What I'm saying is there are things out there that can make it a lot easier. And, whenever we take advantage of those things, then it, if it makes putting a nutritious, whole foods meal on the table for your family, if it makes that more within your grasp, it's worth it. It's worth it to consider it at least. So, like I said, convenience foods are not absent in my home at all. Many of you listening, you may do a much better job of clean eating than I will ever do. And that's awesome for you, right? But I do make a lot of our food from scratch. I mean, a very, very large percentage of our food, I cook it myself. And I'm just using pantry staples 90% of the time. And, food in the freezer, like meat in the freezer, a lot of which we harvest here on our homestead. So I do see the benefits of that, and I'd like to dissect that in today's episode. All taken with a grain of salt that, I don't expect perfection from anybody else, because I'm certainly not perfect. So I think we can all just share recipes with one another and not be judgy. How's that sound? Because y'all know, I mean, it's a slippery slope, and I don't know. Anyway, so what do I consider a well-stocked pantry? I consider, like I said before, I do order in bulk from Azure Standard because I'm able to, and I do have a place to kind of store those things. So we do keep 5-gallon buckets full of things like the bread flour that I use, the all-purpose flour that I use, our oats, our sugar, cane sugar. I buy honey in bulk, or either like I actually just harvested 3 gallons of honey from our beehives. So I have honey on hand, and I buy maple syrup. And so those things I tend to have a lot of because I buy them in bulk. And when I run low, I order more. And so, but it's a really cool feeling. Like, and I put them in the 5-gallon buckets with like the twisty top, like things that keep them all, situated. And side note, when I buy the big 50-pound bags of flour, I will put them in the freezer for a few days to like kill off any like bug eggs or anything like that are in there. I know that sounds gross, but they're in there. And if you freeze it, it kind of kills that. So you don't have to worry about opening up your thing later on and finding like weevils and stuff. It kind of takes that out of the equation. So anyway, so I find, having those things, I put them in the big buckets, and then I move them, like I will fill up smaller canisters and to keep in my pantry for my everyday, like grabbing out of. So that's what I do. If you're not able to do that, it doesn't mean you can't stock your pantry with staples. It just means you won't be buying them in bulk. You'll just buy them from the grocery store like a normal person, and, throw them, in a canister or whatever you want to use, and use them as you need them, and then buy more when you run out. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I'm able to get it from Azure Standard. It's really good quality. And, price wise, when I buy in bulk, I save a lot of money. So I do that. Now, a well-stocked pantry can make meal planning a lot easier. If you already have your basics, you can slowly learn what works. And, it doesn't mean, like I said, don't mean you don't use a crock pot. Doesn't mean that you don't make pizza dough ahead of time and freeze it for a night that you're in a hurry and pull it out and make a quick pizza for your family. I do that all the time. It just means that like you got those things and you can, you've got the basics to pull from. Because honestly, if you went into the grocery store and they were out of something, 9 times out of 10, if you've got pantry staples, you can make your own version of it. And that's a very comforting feeling when you're not reliant on the grocery store for like the items that enrich your meals. Like if you wanted to make mashed potatoes, you don't have to rely on the package from the store. You can throw them in your Instant Pot and, throw some potatoes in your Instant Pot and let them cook and then drain them and mash them up. And with very little effort, you've got homemade mashed potatoes. I mean, that's just an example. Let's see. All right. So why do I cook from scratch? Now, there are a lot of reasons, obviously. One being that food dyes and preservatives and added ingredients, fillers and stuff in food that have become a commonplace, especially in America. We have lots of food dyes that are actually not even legal in other countries. They've been proven to be bad for us. That's not like conspiracy theory. That's not me making stuff up. That's just facts. I mean, you can't really dispute. You can't pretend that all that added like sodium and stuff is good for us. Like, I mean, it tastes good, but it's not, it's just not good for us. It doesn't nurture our bodies the way that more simple foods can, because our bodies kind of have to pick through and weed through the mess to find what our bodies can use. Whereas if we're, fueling our bodies with something that's more natural, then, we're able to use those nutrients quicker. We're able to, our bodies can fight off what it needs to fight off because it's, it's being nurtured with good things. A lot of times also nutrition is lost in the pursuit of convenience and availability, and you can't dispute that either. Like, I mean, take pork, for example. Pork at the grocery store is usually a pretty affordable meat, especially in today's economy. And that's great. It's fine. And, cooking that from scratch, grabbing that from the grocery store and cooking it in your home is an amazing meal for your family. That's very cool. But I'm just talking as far as convenience goes and nutrition. Pork is a good example because pork is a lot of times raised in confinement. And, just so they can raise, and I'm not shutting down the people that they're just trying to feed everybody. I mean, like, because so many people don't raise their own food, and so many people are consuming it. Like, somebody's got to do it. And so, and sometimes the animals kind of end up being the ones to suffer. But anyway, they're raised in confinement. Well, the pork that you're going to get from those pigs is going to be much more deficient in vitamin D. Like, the finished product of pork is going to have way less vitamin D in it than the pork that I raise, for example, here on our homestead, because they're raised in the sunshine. And I mean, that's just like, you can look at it from a scientific perspective. I'm not like making stuff up. The vitamin D content is so much higher. And why is vitamin D important? If you know anything about vitamins, vitamin D, we get it from sunshine, right? We need it. Our bodies need it. And today, in today's day and age, and with our society living the way we do, most everybody's deficient in it. Okay. But vitamin D helps us to be able to fight off infection, diseases. It helps us to rid our bodies of like free radicals and like bad cells that we don't need. It, has to do, it impacts our mood, and our overall health. So just that one example can show you just how much we've lost along the way because of needing that convenience. So also, whenever you cook from scratch, you're not as vulnerable to shortages in the grocery store. Now, we've all seen shortages over the last 4 years of certain things. I feel like it's a lot more common now. It's almost become commonplace to us that certain things aren't always available, or we're paying astronomical prices at the grocery store. And yes, buying good quality staples for your pantry is not cheap, but honestly, in the long run, like the amount of things you can make yourself instead of buying this extra, it makes a big difference. Honestly, it can impact your food budget depending on what you choose to do and how you choose to do it. But yeah, if the grocery store's out of bread, but you have, say you have flour and you have like yeast and salt and water, or you have a sourdough starter that you keep, at your house, you can make bread. You don't have to have, and the bread you make is probably going to treat your body a lot better and, go a lot further than what you could buy in the grocery store. If they're out of pancake mix or cake mix, you've got flour, you've got baking powder, you can make your own of those things. You're not reliant on that. And what you end up with is going to be a better product ultimately than what they can provide for you, because once again, they're trying to feed the masses. Okay. But what you do, and you can kind of take control in your own home of, you are feeding your family a certain way. Another reason is the quality of food. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I feel like as grocery prices have increased and as the shortages came and went, after everything we went through in the last 4 years, I really do feel like the quality of foods we have access to has decreased drastically. It's like they're just doing the bare minimum to fill our shelves, and I feel like whenever I'm paying this huge amount, this huge sum for food and it's like subpar, it's like an extra kick in the teeth, so it makes me want to cook from scratch more. It makes me want to try to find ways that I can be prepared on a night that I'm been in the garden until dark and I'm tired and I really want to go out and grab something quick. But what can I do? What can I throw in the freezer that I can pull out later? What can I can make 2 casseroles ahead of time and have one frozen. Or when I make red beans and rice, I've got extra. I can freeze it and pull it out because that food is going to be so much better. Because, eating for our family, we sit around a table every single night and eat a meal together. That's just something we've always done. We don't eat in the living room. That's just our personal, that's what we do. Okay. And so being able to sit around and share a meal together, like that's an important part of our day, and making sure that that's, enjoyable for everybody is just something that's really rewarding for me. So yeah, higher demands on goods, this is not a new thing. Like the whole quality of the grocery store decreasing, it's not really a new thing at all. Higher demands on goods have always historically impacted the quality of foods. Take margarine, for example. Here, I'm going with our history lesson again today. I throw it in anytime I can because I'm a nerd. But margarine was created in France in like the 1800s as a food for soldiers. They had to feed the soldiers and they needed some like a butter substitute. So they came up with margarine. Now, when it first was created, it was actually made of like tallow and stuff. It wasn't like the worst thing, it just wasn't butter. But, then as they started to add fillers to it and change it throughout, so now it's just lots of ingredients. You fast forward from that being created to like the 1940s, for example, it was a big part of the ration. Like in Europe, they were actually rationing margarine because butter was really hard to come by. So margarine was at least something they could offer on the ration. But, it was pushed, after that, it began to be pushed as a safer alternative for animal fat. So you just see this kind of progression. It's like, oh, we have this thing that we need for the soldiers. Well, they needed it because they didn't have anything else for these guys. Okay. So they created something. Well, then they make it a little bit easier to get, a little bit more accessible, and they make it a little bit cheaper, and they make it, different. And so then it's a part of the ration. And like, you can even look back. It was not a fun part of the ration. Like, people did not love margarine at all. It was a subpar food that came about from necessity. Okay. And then, like I said, fast forward, and they decided they would push it as a safer alternative to animal fats. It was a replacement for something whole food like butter that became commonplace for the wrong reasons. And even though we have studies dating back to the 60s telling us that animal fats are not as bad for us as they once thought they were. And of course, we've got all kinds of new research talking about how it's just full of bad stuff for us. We still see it pushed from time to time as a healthier alternative to traditional butter and animal fats, when originally, in reality, it was born of necessity as an alternative to a more natural food source that became scarce. Know your why. Why are we told these things? Why are we buying this stuff? So now, throughout history, convenience foods have been a part of the narrative that time spent in the kitchen is time wasted. I know that a lot of, whether you're in a family relationship, if you're single, if you have a partner, if you have kids, if you don't, whatever, odds are you're working. You're probably trying to do something to make money in some way. Okay. Because with this economy, most of everybody has to have a job. That's just the way it is. We don't have the luxury of all the mamas staying at home anymore, so she can like cook in the kitchen all day long. And I'm not saying that was what anybody needs to be doing. I'm saying that they've used that to their advantage. Marketing and, different companies have used that idea to their advantage to make us think that time spent in the kitchen is time wasted. When in reality, time spent in the kitchen, that's nourishing our whole bodies. It's nurturing our families. And, when we look at some of why we do some of the things we do in the kitchen nowadays, we can see that many of our ideals are misplaced and misled because propaganda has been fed to us, different things. And it's like, oh, mom, you should be able to come home and just put something in the microwave. And I get that. I mean, like I said, I've already covered this. I have convenience foods in my house. But the narrative that homemade food that's from scratch cooking is some elusive, like impossible thing that takes hours out of your time every day and that is like so unattainable is just not true. That's just what they want you to believe. It may at first, be a really big change as far as like having to dedicate time in the kitchen. And I know not everybody can do it every day, but don't think that just because your life doesn't look like Ma Walton's, that means you can't feed your family well and that you can't sit down at the table to like a from scratch meal a couple times a week at least. Because you can, take baby steps and make changes where you can and you'll see results and it's going to be fine. Like just don't listen to all the narratives. Because they want you to think it's super hard and unattainable when in reality, from scratch cooking at its core is just very rustic, simple food that comes together pretty quickly. I mean, a roasted chicken and some vegetables, you can do the whole thing in your crock pot, and that's all food that you can pronounce, the ingredients and that you threw together in the morning before your day started or whatever. And, some days don't look like that, but when you can, you can do it. You can do it. It's not as hard as people make it out to be. It doesn't have to be. Now, you can dedicate hours and hours and create amazing things in the kitchen. But you can also dedicate, be intentional about a few, when you can take time to throw some extra pizza dough in the freezer. And you can brown maybe some ground meat in batches that you can pull from and make tacos one night or whatever. Like those little things matter. They really help. Like they keep you from going out to eat once a week. Then wow, you fed your family once a week that you would have gone out. So take baby steps. Don't feel shame and don't be intimidated because you can do it. You just got to kind of work a little at a time. Now, throughout history, okay, like I said, convenience foods, they're like, oh, time in the kitchen is wasted. You deserve this easier way to feed your family, blah, blah, blah. But when we really look at why we do some of the things we do, like consider dairy. Okay. This is one of my favorite stories. This is really why you need to know your why. So you think about dairy. I feed my family raw goat's milk on a very regular basis. I have 2 dairy goats that I milk every day. I make cheese. I make soap and stuff from the milk too, but we drink it. My kids like to drink it. I consider it a positive nutrient source for my family, full of, probiotics, antibodies, vitamins, overall just nutrition for my family. My kids can tolerate it better than they tolerate cow's milk, pasteurized cow's milk. And so, but put the brakes on that because, raw milk. Some people, if you're not educated on it, if you've never been exposed to the idea, it sounds icky. It may sound a little scary, but why have we as a society become a people who believe that raw milk is poison? Well, I mean, honestly, because it can be. I mean, I'm a nurse, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, microbes aren't a thing because they very much are. But the issue with raw milk really never landed on small farms and homesteads. Mama's milk cow really wasn't killing anybody. Okay. The main reason the pasteurization became necessary was because right after the Industrial Revolution, people were moving into the cities in huge numbers, right? They were working in Industrial Revolution equals industry growing, equals, factory needs workers, things are being built, everything, they need workers. And so people moved from agricultural type communities into larger cities, and somebody has to feed those people. I mean, you see this time and time again. Somebody needed to feed the people. Now, how are you going to feed them? In a way that's not going to kill everybody. It was unsafe to transport and store all of that milk, like to get it to the cities and get it distributed to these people. So pasteurization was an answered prayer at the time. Pasteurization came about, it was invented and discovered around the exact same time as the Industrial Revolution, a few years after. And so all these people are sitting there needing stuff, and they're like, oh, we can do this, and then maybe we won't make people sick. And milk is interesting. If you look into the history of milk, what they were doing to the milk when they were short on it and when it was hard to get, and they were adding chalk and everything, it was crazy. So regulations are not always a bad thing, okay? I'm not going to say that. But now, is pasteurization a positive thing? Absolutely. But is it necessary is it necessary to demonize raw milk? Absolutely not. This is a very good example of when knowing your why we do the things we do, can impact how we run our households, how we think about things, how we feed our families. Because, yes, those people, to get milk to those people, it needed to be pasteurized because it could not safely be transported. You don't want to transport raw milk hundreds of miles back and forth multiple times a day to all these people, and it's 80 degrees outside. Ugh, no, you don't want to do that. But my raw milk that's coming 30 yards from my milk stand into my house, it's not the problem. And so just don't get, there's the whole, yes, it's a good thing, but we don't need, but why is it needed? And does that mean it's for everybody, that this one law should apply to everything? No. You're on your farm drinking your raw milk, you're handling it well. That's a risk that you take for your family, that you want to do, that you see the benefits outweigh the risk, which is exactly what I feel. And I've never had a problem with it. But like I said, I'm not going to scream, oh, all milk needs to be raw. No, it does not. But know your why. Know why our food system does the things it does. And sometimes it gets misconstrued and kind of lost in translation. It's oh, just because they pasteurize milk doesn't mean that raw milk is always yucky and nasty and dangerous. That just means that I personally would not want to go in Walmart and buy raw milk. Ew. But now if I'm buying it from a farm, from a person that I know, I feel I should be able to do that, even though I can't in our state, without lots of regulations. But anyway, yeah, so just know your why. I could talk forever on that. I want to move on. I'm not here to demonize convenience foods. They have a time and a place in my own home. And I buy things like applesauce, yogurt, pretzels, things like that all the time. And I just try to make sure that the ingredient list is short. And, I utilize those things in our meals a lot every day. I mean, I can't make everything from home, I don't have an apple tree. I can't make applesauce. But my kids like to eat it, so I buy it. I buy unsweetened applesauce with one ingredient. It is what it is. So, what type of things do we eat? What do I cook? I talked about why I try to cook from scratch as much as I can. And so what am I making? I'm making things like sheet pan meals that I can take a protein and a vegetable, and usually sweet potatoes or just red potatoes or whatever I have on hand, mixing it together and seasoning it, pop it in the oven, and you got everything right there on one sheet pan. You use parchment paper, and you just got to crumple it up and wipe out your pan, and you're done cleaning. It's nothing. There's nothing fancy there, guys. Tacos. We like tacos, ground meat, ground pork, chicken, whatever. I'm usually making that once a week. If I don't make tacos, it's usually enchiladas or something similar like that. And I'm not using homemade tortillas all the time, guys. I know how to do it. They're great. But as of right now, tortillas is still something that I very much rely on the grocery store for. And like I said, I could make my own I have before, especially in a pinch, I didn't have any. I was I can make them. And it's fine. It doesn't take long. It really doesn't. But I still, y'all, one day maybe I can say I hadn't bought tortillas from the store in a year, but today's not that day. Anyway, also like spaghetti, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, jambalaya. I buy spaghetti sauce from the store. I try to buy the kind that doesn't have a ton of sugar in it. Doesn't always work out that way. But still, you know, I'm making baby steps when I can. You know, like I'm doing the thing. I'm trying to do the things. So, it doesn't have to be complicated. For things like breakfast, I make muffins ahead of time for the kids, or I'll make power balls, which are like peanut butter, oatmeal, sunflower seeds, dried fruit, stuff like that. It's like a little protein ball thing. I'll make those and keep those in the fridge. They can grab them out whenever they want them. And usually they grab applesauce or yogurt to go with it, or fruit for breakfast. And that's usually what they have. Things like seasoned pretzels, yogurt, applesauce, homemade cookies, you know, homemade snacks like that, like easy things. I try to keep on hand as far as snacks go. And yes, we still buy some snacks too. And I wish we didn't, but we do. And so that's it. That's, you know, 100% transparent. That's what's going on in my house, in my kitchen. And that's why. And, you know, I just hope that I encouraged you. Maybe you see, you know, everybody's not doing the perfect thing. You don't have to be doing it perfect to start or to be trying. It doesn't negate the good you're doing if you also run by and grab takeout a couple times a week because your schedule doesn't allow you to be in the kitchen that night. That's nothing to be ashamed of. That's not anything, you know, like I said, it doesn't negate the good just because you balance it with, you know, some out of necessity sometimes of doing different things or making different choices. So don't be discouraged. Let's just keep doing the things. Let's just keep trying, taking our baby steps, finding our balance and what works for our families. And yeah, do what you can. That's what I do. And some days it looks amazing. I feel like a rock star. And other days I feel like the opposite of a rock star. I feel like dirt, but it's all good. We just try. We just keep going. And so thank you so much if you've hung in this long. I appreciate you. Thank you if you have shared, talked about this, told a friend, anything in any way. Just know from the bottom of my heart, it really does matter. And I really do see it. I really do care. And I appreciate it so much. I hope that you will continue to share, like, subscribe, all the things. You can find me on social media. I'm Streamwater Farm across the board with TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And yeah, I already said earlier, you find me here on Wednesdays at 7 on Wally Media Group. And my website is inkandoveralls.com. You can go there and the audio podcasts are there. There's a little tab there to select that. There's a link for merch and there's a link to my shop where I sell my goat's milk soaps, my tinctures, my salves, all the things I make, things like that. I kind of always say the same spiel at the end, but anyway, I hope that until I see you again, that you'll find the beauty wherever you are, even if it's in your kitchen. And I hope that you'll have a great day and keep on trying and making baby steps. Y'all have a good one. Thanks.